hammer it down to sort of one fine not communicating as well. And on top of it, we've got all sorts of other design and usability issues. Now this IM button here is something I think to dwell a little bit on. We like role-based navigation. We think when it's done tastefully and right and cleanly, it's a good element to have to help people get to links that you've put together for them, in particular alums versus perspectives versus faculty and staff. But this module is problematic because actually for the first couple of times that I looked at it, I actually thought it was a search bar in this box here. And maybe that's because I've got attention deficit disorder and I look at sites very, very quickly. But I'm probably not that different than from your average 17-year-old who's blowing through these very, very quickly. We'll open up this module. Okay, you've got a nice list. It's actually very difficult to read something that has this long, long line. And because the more I sit here and read each column and then reset my eye rather than scanning through it very, very quickly. And some of the other processes are, if you click through other sections, that actually other sections, such as I am an alum or I'm a faculty member, the nav bar actually changes. So that's a no-no. And that was something right away that we knew we wanted to change. And then stepping through the site, looking at the character section, which seems to be the place where they tried to invest the most in terms of putting something together about the brand, about who they are, or very historical image, historical quote. You have lots of words around history. And it's not that these things are unimportant. They're very, very important to the overall message and the overall, I think, aura of what Bryn Mawr brings to the table that distinguishes them from other colleges and universities. But it's not a very modern message. It's not something that really, I think, is going to capture the imagination of your average perspective. And plus, it's buried a level down in a link that we're not sure that anybody would really understand. So that's a big issue. And then as we click through further, the admission section, I actually like this admission section from a complexity of information standpoint, but I think Fawn and I both agreed that from a grid standpoint, you've got 1 grid, 2 grids, 3 grids. The information is kind of everywhere. Things are indented. There's no clean thresholds. And again, you've got treatments and layouts and design elements that the overall impression is a very, very busy page with primary real estate being given to an element which probably isn't that important. Just a picture of a bunch of trees here. So this page could definitely use some redo. And that kind of takes us through a few key pages of the site. So to just, and let me back up, all of that came out of our initial auditing phase of just taking a quick look at the site design standpoint. So just recap some of this, a real issue with messaging and the opposite of show and tell. What can we do to bring taglines and key messages to the homepage, tie captions to all different images, make sure that people know who they're clicking on when we look at the different alumni to take that and make it a clear sort of approach. Design stayed blue, and that previous design is just standing out way too much. And the sidebar elements are really muddy. Those backdrop watermarks aren't really doing anything. And then white on teal is just really difficult to read. I also had that spacing in particular was very difficult. About it because of our understanding of design. From a usability standpoint, I think the IM box and the navigation in particular are really the places to see what we can do from a refresh versus redesign standpoint. In a more sophisticated audit, we would do some competitor analysis as well as look at underlying technology, CMS versus no CMS, look at some of the other systems that you might be integrating with in terms of course management, and certainly look at staffing as well. 8-week project, those were not as germane to the situation. So some of the techniques that we went ahead and used to get this project to go. Well, I think one of the things that we really pride ourselves on, and this is a situation where if you're going to do a week project and try to get a refresh done very, very quickly, you really make sure that you've got strong leadership and management on both sides. And I think that that's a real compliment to Tracy, the project manager at Bryn Mawr, as well as Lisa McNamara here at iFactory, that this project went off so successfully. They had to establish very clear communication channels and to make sure that all teams understood what we were doing, i.e. that we were going to make the best site we could in the week last period, We're not going to focus on getting everything right. We're going to focus on getting as much right as we can, and then prep ourselves for a more long-term redesign as necessary. Now, some of the tools that we use to make things a little bit easier in terms of managing communications are some sort of online extranet. And we recommend this for anybody that you work with. You know, if you've got an internal web team that you work with, if you've got a vendor that you're working with, see if they've got online tools like wikis and extranets that allow you to post deliverables, send in comments. And what you're looking at here is a reverse chronological order of everything. Our project profile, which is our strategic doc, to meeting notes, to all the IA deliverables and design deliverables. And if I'm on this project team, I can jump in here and look at any of these links and send in my comments while I'm on the road or on vacation. And it just makes the process of running a project like this much easier. Some of the other deliverables include on the IA sitemap and wireframes. So here's an example sitemap, and you'll see that there were a couple of sections in particular that we really focused on. So, for example, offices are a huge area on our site, and one of the things we tried to do was find a way to lift offices up to a higher level. Admissions and financial aid is the predictable term that people are looking for, because financial aid always goes hand in hand with admissions, and what's something that we can recommend in the library, for example. All these websites to get to course management tools as well as library. Is there something that we can do to lift the sorts of links to a higher level? So that's something that sitemap exercise is really good for, grouping and clustering chunks of navigation and the labels and the nomenclature, and making sure that we're really doing a good job of creating predictable links for people. Now, the problem with the sitemap is you can look at a diagram like this, and it doesn't really give you a strong sense of what you're going to emphasize, how the user come across to a visitor, and what we wireframes. And wireframes are basically black-white rendition of navigation through a medium. In this case, we chose to do them in HTML just because we're very fast at it, and it allowed us to solve problems quickly that everybody could look at. And what you're seeing here are reworked nav bars, more prominence to, let's say, something like a give button, blowing out the role-based navigation so that it isn't so very, keeping some of the elements that we know are highly trafficked, things like transportation rules, and the different alumni portraits. And then you see a major addition here of a messaging module incorporating a number of messages that Marianne had developed in terms of the academic experience, the leadership for women, the community, and then quick links for admissions and stuff like that. And if I click around here, you'll see that it's a pretty full set that allows us to dive down and look at some of the different functionality. Wireframing is crucial. You've got to do some sort of functional experimentation and testing to make sure that you know what you're doing. And in the long-term project, what we would probably be doing is throwing this in front of audiences as well, and actually asking those to some of the tasks that are laid in our original auditing phase. Obviously, we didn't have a lot of time to do that. And, let me just jump back to my presentation. The IDOable, the wireframing, the sitemaps, and the use cases and user scenarios, those are really kind of the underlying structure of what we're trying to propose as a solution. I look at it as kind of eating your vegetables and making sure you know exactly what you're doing. The look and feel overall aesthetic approach to this site in terms of its impression and its graphic design are done through what we call art direction and look and feel. And art direction is a great phase, basically a time when we sit down and we gather together everything that we know about your audiences. We look at the existing site, and we're not gentle. We basically tear apart what we think is not working there, and then probably also analyze your existing collateral, break it down into design elements and type treatments to look at how you represent your institution, and then again recap what we know about your audiences, primary and secondary audiences. And then we do something that we call an adjective exercise. And this is something that you can do anytime in your institution. We love doing this. Basically, get everybody around using single words or phrases if you can about your institution and about your website. What are the adjectives and emotions and feelings that you want to get across? And invariably, you get a fairly common ones like clean, professional, elegant, beautiful. Business schools, whom we serve a lot of, HBS and Wharton will both leadership and global and innovation. But what we're looking for are outliers. We're looking for the things that are really tied directly to our experience and to a deep personal knowledge of the institution. So you see things like eclectic, for campus beauty, curious, worldly. These are wonderful words which